I've already been recording for like 7 minutes, but I keep messing up, so here we go. Welcome to the Principles of Success. My name is Nathan, and this is Season 1, Episode 9. And this month, we are talking about the principles of success. And originally, I had an outline all set up for this, but because I'm recording this at the peak hysteria for the Wuhan flu or the coronavirus, I've adjusted it slightly to take that into account. And when I say peak hysteria, I don't mean that it's necessarily at the worst point that it's going to get dealing with this. I just mean that people's level of panic, this is probably about as high as it goes, because what people fear the most is the unknown. And as we learn more and more about this virus, we'll know more on how to handle it, and people's hysteria will go down. And I've talked about how this is mostly improv, but I'm still prepared for it. I still have an outline to make sure that all of my points get covered and all of the principles that I want to talk about get covered. But the individual words that are coming out of my mouth as I'm talking about each individual principle, that is improv. And so with that said, the first principle I want to talk about is the principle of standing guard to the doorway of your mind. And essentially what that's talking about is making sure that the information that you allow into your brain is both beneficial and accurate. Too often, we allow hearsay to go into our brain as if it was fact. And too often we allow negative hearsay to be the predominant amount that's going in. Successful people generally do not watch the news, especially not mainstream media. The reason why is not because they want to be ignorant, but because they don't have time for it. And most of the time, there's no usefulness for it. Now, I'm not saying just turn a blind eye to everything that's going on around you, but be critical about it and don't buy into panic. If I grew up in Oklahoma, and if a tornado alarm went off, first thing I'm going to do is make sure it's not a false alarm and all of that. But I'm not spending every single day going, all right, is there a tornado coming? No, okay. Next hour, is there a tornado coming? No, okay. And lots of successful people tune out most of the news because mainstream media's main product and news's main product is negativity and panic. And there's just no purpose in it. Generally, if it's something you actually need to worry about it, even a little bit, you're going to hear about it. Like, there's no way you haven't heard about the coronavirus, even if you've been hiding in the woods. If you have any contact with people, they're going to talk about it. I've had friends that were on a hunting trip, and they still heard about it because they tried to go to restaurants and gas stations and stuff like that, and that's all anybody could talk about. So if it's something really important, you're still going to hear about it. So don't panic. Don't waste so much of your time absorbing all of that information that's not going to be beneficial to you. In a few short months, all that time that you spent getting every single update on the coronavirus is going to be completely pointless. I'm not saying to be ignorant, but there's a fine balance between the two, if you get what I'm saying. Lots of successful people will just find one or two sources that they trust to digest all of the information and give them the actual important details. And I have a couple of those. I know all the important facts about the coronavirus before anybody really talks to me about it, because I spend 5 minutes getting all the details and then I'm good to go for the rest of the day. And when something is important, just be prepared. If you're prepared, well, then you don't need to worry about things. Just don't dwell on it. That's all I'm saying. And it's not the media's fault. The reason why it's called mainstream media, and the reason why mainstream media is so negative, is because most people are always looking for the negative. It's part of our wiring. Back in the day when we were in tribes, if your brain wants to make sure that it notices all the danger more than it notices all of the benefits. Because if you miss a berry bush, you might be hungry, but you're still going to live another day. But if you miss a bear, and that bear attacks you, you don't get a second chance for that one. And that's why our brains are wired that way. And part of it is, and the main function from that is called your RTS, which stands for Reticular Activating System. And the Reticular Activating System is basically just a relevance filter for your brain. So the best example for this is, let's say you just bought a new car. Suddenly, or bought something new. Suddenly, you see it everywhere. Those were there before, but because it was not important to you, your brain filtered it out. We're bombarded with information from our eyes, our ears, our nose, but if it's not of relevance, the primary function of the RTS is to make sure that we don't have to pay attention. Because if you had to pay attention to every single little detail that you're absorbing, you would go mad. So that's why the media is so negative. And why so many people are focused on looking for the negatives instead of the positives. So, learning is good. Learning about negative subject matters isn't that beneficial for you. And it especially isn't beneficial for you in the long term. And there's plenty of good things that you can learn about that are beneficial in the short term, but not necessarily in the long term. So you need to make sure that it's beneficial, that it's accurate, and that it's beneficial for the long term. I'm struggling today. I've been recording for a good long while at this point, and I think I might have, at this point, probably, hopefully, 5 minutes of audio. So let's just keep going and keep trying to make these points, and hopefully once I edit it all, it'll be cohesive, because this is a mess. So I was talking about making sure it's beneficial in the long term. Another point is making sure that it's not pointless. There's an infinite amount of information out in the world. And to be honest, there really isn't a completely useless piece of information, but some of them are a lot closer than others. Like, for instance, knowing the names of every single Star Wars character can be beneficial when you're talking to a Star Wars nerd and trying to vibe with them. However, it is nowhere near as useful as almost an infinite number of other things. So it goes back to priorities, making sure that the information you're spending your time absorbing is has a use, because learning just for the sake of learning is good. Learning for a specific reason is a whole lot better and more effective. I don't know where I'm going with this. Make sure what you're learning is important. Make sure you benefit from what you're learning. Learning about success is way more important than learning about the Kardashians. That's pretty much all I have to say on the matter. But I might just call it here for today, because this is a mess. See y'all next week.